The heat of the kitchen was a familiar comfort, a sharp contrast to the cold, calculated reality of my financial portfolio. I stood at the stainless steel pass, my fingers lightly tracing the edge of a pristine white porcelain plate. A single drop of reduction was out of place. I wiped it away with a sterile cloth. Precision. It was the same precision that had built my net worth to an exact $68,492,115.82 across diversified global assets. Today, I was dressed in a simple, unbranded white chef's jacket and a pair of worn, slip-resistant black shoes. It was my standard uniform when I chose to shadow my own executive chef, a man I paid $250,000 a year to execute my vision. Beyond the swinging doors lay the main dining room of Ethel, currently the most exclusive culinary establishment in the city. I owned the building, I owned the LLC, I owned the very chairs my family was currently sitting on. They did not know that. To them, I was just Harper, the disappointment, the quiet, stubborn daughter who refused to marry a mid-level corporate executive and instead wasted her life moving to the city to work in kitchens. I pushed the kitchen doors open, stepping into the dim, amber-lit ambiance of the main floor. The acoustic panels in the ceiling absorbed the harsh noise, leaving only the soft hum of classical string arrangements and the delicate clinking of crystal glassware. I stood in the shadows near the wine cellar, observing Table 1, the VIP enclave. My sister Chloe sat at the center, radiating loud, desperate energy. It was her 25th birthday. She was wearing a sequin dress that I recognized from a mid-tier rental service, though she carried herself as if it were bespoke couture. Surrounding her were our parents and a curated group of her wealthy, superficial friends. I stepped out of the shadows, intending to cross the floor to speak with my general manager. That was my first mistake, or perhaps, the perfect catalyst. Chloe's sharp eyes caught my movement. Her fake laughter died instantly, replaced by a look of sheer, unfiltered disgust. "Harper?" she called out, her voice cutting through the refined atmosphere like a jagged edge. "What on earth are you doing here?" The entire table turned to look at me. My parents' faces flushed with immediate embarrassment. My mother instinctively raised a hand to shield her face, as if my presence in a plain white jacket was a contagious disease. I walked toward the table, my expression entirely neutral. "I work here," I stated flatly. It was not a lie. Chloe let out a harsh, mocking laugh. "You work here? At Ethel? Let me guess, you are the one scraping the plates in the back?" She turned to her friends, a triumphant sneer on her face. "See? I told you my sister was a lost cause. While I am securing brand deals, she is smelling like old garlic." My father cleared his throat, leaning forward with a dark scowl. "Harper, leave. Now. You are humiliating us. This is a $5,000 minimum table. We are celebrating your sister's success. We do not need the staff bothering us, especially when the staff is the family failure." I looked at his watch. A counterfeit luxury piece. I noted the slightly misaligned bezel. Beside him, my mother was clutching a designer handbag, the logo overly prominent, screaming for attention. They were a textbook study in depreciating liabilities. "I am not bothering you," I replied, my voice low and even, devoid of any emotional inflection. "I was simply passing through." "Well, pass through faster," Chloe snapped, snapping her fingers at me like I was a stray dog. "Actually, since you are here and wearing the uniform, go get me another glass of the 2015 Cabernet. And do not spill it on your cheap shoes." I stood there, feeling the smooth fabric of my jacket. I could have ended it right then. I could have signaled the manager and had security escort them out. But logic dictated a different approach. A premature eviction would only feed their narrative. I needed them to dig their own grave, deeply and irrevocably. "I will send your server over," I said calmly. "No," Chloe demanded, her voice rising, drawing the attention of the adjacent tables. "I told you to get it. You are a prep cook. Do your job, Harper, or I swear, I will call the manager over right now and have you fired on the spot. I know the owner of this place is notoriously strict." I held her gaze. The irony was a tangible, heavy thing in the air. "You know the owner?" I asked, my tone perfectly flat. "Everyone knows about the owner. A brilliant investor," Chloe lied flawlessly. "Now, Go get my wine before I ruin your pathetic little career. I gave her a single, slow nod. Understood. I turned on my heel, the rubber sole of my shoe silent against the Italian marble, leaving them to their delusions. The trap was set. I walked away from table 1, the harsh glare of my sister's entitlement fading behind the rhythmic hum of the dining room. I bypassed the waitstaff station and moved directly into the climate-controlled glass enclosure of the wine cellar. The air was a crisp 55 degrees. I approached the locked reserve cabinet, my thumb pressing against the biometric scanner. A quiet click confirmed my access. Inside sat the 2015 Cabernet Chloe had demanded a rare vintage from a boutique vineyard in Napa, retailing at $1,200 a bottle. I pulled the bottle from its cradle. The dark glass was cold, heavy, and unforgiving. Just like the lesson my family was about to learn. I brought the wine to the sommelier station, where my general manager, Marcus, was reviewing a digital seating chart. He looked up, his posture immediately straightening. "Miss Harper," he murmured, his voice pitched low to protect my anonymity. "Is there an issue with table 1? "No issue, Marcus," I replied, placing the bottle on the polished oak counter. "Just a minor adjustment in protocol. My sister, Chloe, is seated there. She believes I am a prep cook. Let her continue to believe it." Marcus's brow furrowed slightly, a flicker of professional concern crossing his features. "They have been difficult, ma'am. The young lady has already snapped at 2 servers and demanded a complimentary Imperial Ossetra caviar service because it is her birthday. She also loudly claimed she is a close personal friend of the owner." I felt a cold, sharp smile pull at the corner of my mouth. "Did she? Fascinating. Give her the caviar. Give her this wine. In fact, whatever table 1 orders tonight, expedite it. But ensure every single item is meticulously itemized on their final bill." Marcus nodded, his tablet glowing in the dim light. "Of course. And the complimentary requests? Deny them politely," I instructed. "But if she insists or if she threatens your staff, yield. Let her accumulate the debt. I want a comprehensive digital trail of every demand she makes." I watched through the cellar glass as a server approached, table 1, presenting the wine. Chloe snatched the bottle from him, inspecting the label with feigned expertise. She nodded dismissively, not bothering to offer a single word of thanks. My father, meanwhile, was gesturing expansively, boasting about a corporate merger that likely existed only in his imagination. My mother sat quietly, adjusting her counterfeit bag, completely oblivious to the financial guillotine suspended directly above them. They were building a tower of arrogance on a foundation of sand, and I owned the beach. I stepped back into the kitchen, the ambient heat immediately enveloping me. Chef Julian was plating a delicate sea bass, his tweezers placing microgreens with absolute surgical precision. "The VIP table is testing the floor staff," Julian noted without looking up from his work. "They are testing themselves," I corrected smoothly. Through the pass, I saw Chloe stand up from her chair. She was holding her phone high, live streaming to her modest following. She pointed towards the kitchen doors, her lips moving in a visible, ugly sneer. She was mocking me to her audience, solidifying her fake persona as the successful sibling while dragging my name through the mud for cheap engagement. I pulled out my own secure device. A customized dashboard loaded instantly, displaying real-time metrics for Ethel. I tapped into the encrypted security feed. Camera 4 provided a high-definition, unobstructed view of table 1. I hit the record function, archiving the footage directly to my private server. The data packets transferred instantly, a silent accumulation of undeniable proof. Every boast, every insult, every drop of expensive wine consumed, it was all being quantified. The trap was fully set, and the prey had locked the door behind them. 2 hours had passed. The dinner rush at Ethel was a masterclass in controlled chaos, but my attention remained anchored to the encrypted tablet resting on the stainless steel prep counter. I watched the live point-of-sale data stream in. Table 1 was not just eating. They were gorging on their own hubris. The digital receipt ticked upward with mechanical precision. Another bottle of the 2015 Cabernet, 2 orders of the Hokkaido scallop crudo with shaved white truffles. The truffles alone, flown in fresh from Alba that morning, added $400 to the subtotal. The current running tab sat at a precise $8,450. And they were not finished. Through the glass pane of the kitchen doors, I observed the arrival of 4 more guests. Chloe's inner circle, a group of equally vacuous influencers dressed in fast fashion masquerading as haute couture. They squeezed into the booth, loud and disruptive, completely fracturing the elegant ambience of the dining room. I zoomed in on the security feed. Chloe was holding court. "Order whatever you want, guys," I read her lips through the high-definition monitor. "The owner practically begged me to host my birthday here. It is all taken care of." My father was leaning across the table, speaking to a newly arrived guest, a minor real estate developer he had been trying to court for months. "Yes, well, my portfolio is expanding," my father lied smoothly, swirling his wine. "We are looking at acquiring commercial properties in the financial district." I pulled up his public financial records on my secondary monitor. His actual portfolio consisted of a heavily mortgaged suburban home, a leased mid-tier sedan, and 3 maxed-out credit cards with a combined debt of $42,000. The contrast between his projected image and his quantitative reality was pathetic. My mother, meanwhile, was busy adjusting her counterfeit designer bag, carefully angling the oversized, fake gold logo toward the table's center so the new arrivals would notice it. She then complained loudly to a passing server that her sparkling water was not perfectly chilled, sending it back for the 3rd time. "Chef," Marcus's voice crackled through my discreet earpiece. "Table 1 has requested the A5 Wagyu tomahawk for the new arrivals. They also demanded it be cooked well done." I paused. A well-done A5 Wagyu was a culinary crime, an insult to the animal and the chef. Julian, standing nearby, overheard and closed his eyes in physical pain. "Serve it," I instructed into my lapel mic. "Exactly as requested. At $200 an ounce, that specific cut will add another $10,000 to their tab. Charge them the off-menu penalty for the destruction of premium inventory." The evening stretched on. The ruined Wagyu was delivered. More wine was poured. The acoustic dampeners in the ceiling struggled to contain the raucous laughter erupting from their table. They were oblivious to the quiet resentment radiating from the patrons around them, and completely blind to the trap that had just snapped shut. At 10:45, the inevitable moment arrived. Chloe signaled a server, snapping her fingers in that sharp, demeaning rhythm. Marcus stepped into the kitchen, his posture rigid. "They have requested the check, Miss Harper." Or rather, the young lady demanded I bring the comp slip for her to sign. I tapped the screen of my tablet. The system calculated the final sum, including city tax and the mandatory 20% gratuity for large parties. The total glowed back at me in stark, unforgiving white text: $21,492.65. "Print the itemized receipt, Marcus," I said, my voice dropping to a low, icy register. "Do not place it in a leather folio. I want every single charge visible." "And who will present it to them, ma'am?" Marcus asked, a faint gleam of anticipation in his eyes. I reached up and slowly unbuttoned the top collar of my plain white chef's jacket. I smoothed the fabric, ensuring not a single wrinkle marred the presentation. I picked up the printed receipt, the paper crisp and heavy with impending consequence. "I will," I replied, stepping toward the swinging doors. "It is time for the owner to introduce herself." I pushed through the swinging doors, leaving the oppressive heat of the kitchen for the cool, climate-controlled air of the main dining room. The acoustic design of Ethel ensured my footsteps were entirely silent against the Italian marble. I held the crisp white receipt in my right hand, the stark black ink detailing a financial execution. Table 1 was in the middle of a toast. Chloe had her glass of the 2015 Cabernet raised high, the expensive liquid catching the ambient amber light. To the owner of Ethel, who personally ensured my 25th birthday would be unforgettable, she announced loudly to her circle of influencers. They cheered, completely unaware of the irony coding every syllable. I stepped into their peripheral vision, breaking the circle. The laughter died abruptly. Chloe lowered her glass, her meticulously contoured face twisting into a scowl. "What are you doing back out here?" Chloe hissed, leaning forward. "I specifically told the manager to bring the comp slip. I do not want to look at you, Harper. Get out of my sight." I did not blink. I did not raise my voice. I simply extended my arm and placed the printed receipt flat on the center of the table, directly over a small, artificial candle. There was no leather folio to soften the blow. The total $21,492.65 was highlighted by the flickering light, impossible to ignore. "This is your itemized bill," I stated, my tone devoid of any familial warmth. "Payment is due immediately." My father slammed his hand on the table, the silverware rattling. "Are you insane? We are not paying a dime. Chloe is a personal friend of the owner. We are VIP guests. Go fetch your manager right now, Harper. You are officially fired. I will make sure you never work in this city again." I looked at him, noting the vein pulsing in his forehead. He was a man who relied on intimidation, a tactic that only worked on those who feared losing something. I had nothing to lose to him. "Marcus," I called out softly, not breaking eye contact with my father. Marcus materialized instantly from the shadows, his posture impeccable. He stood slightly behind my right shoulder, a clear visual indicator of hierarchy. "Yes, ma'am. Tell your employee to pack her things." My mother snapped at Marcus, her face flushed under her heavy makeup. "She is harassing us. And bring us the zeroed-out invoice Chloe arranged with the owner." Marcus looked down at my mother with a perfectly calibrated expression of polite pity. "I apologize for any confusion, madam. But there is no zeroed-out invoice. And I cannot fire Miss Harper." "Why not?" Chloe demanded, her voice shrill, drawing stares from the surrounding tables. "I know the owner. I will call him right now and have both of you removed." I reached into the pocket of my chef's jacket and placed a sleek, black titanium card on the table next to the receipt. It bore the crest of Ethel LLC and my full legal name, etched in silver. "You cannot call him Chloe," I said, my voice cutting through the noise like a scalpel. "Because the owner is a woman. Specifically the sole proprietor of Ethel LLC, operating under my primary holding company, which currently oversees a portfolio of 11 high-end dining establishments across 3 continents." I watched the color drain from Chloe's face, tracing the exact moment her fabricated reality collided with my quantifiable truth. "I approved the floor plan," I continued, my words methodical and relentless. "I curated the wine cellar you just raided. I hired Marcus to manage my staff. And I am currently waiting for $21,492.65. The silence that fell over table 1 was absolute. The influencer friends shifted uncomfortably, suddenly very interested in the table linens. My father's jaw went slack, his eyes darting from my face to the titanium card, then to the astronomical bill. My mother's hand trembled as she instinctively reached for her fake designer bag, pulling it closer as if it could shield her from the crushing weight of the debt. She looked at the bill, her eyes widening at the $10,000 charge for the ruined Wagyu alone. This is a mistake," she stammered, her arrogant facade crumbling. "Harper, sweetie. You own this?" "Do not call me sweetie," I replied, my voice dropping to a glacial whisper. "We ceased being family the moment you banished me to the kitchen. Now, you are simply a customer. And your bill is past due." The 4 influencer friends, who had been loudly demanding caviar mere minutes ago, suddenly found the intricate patterns on the Italian marble floor fascinating. One of them, a girl in a neon green faux silk dress, slowly stood up, grabbing her tiny metallic clutch. "So, we actually have another party to get to," she mumbled, not making eye contact with Chloe or anyone else at the table. "We only had a few sips of wine anyway. Happy birthday, Chloe." "Wait, you guys cannot leave." Chloe shrieked, her voice cracking, dropping the curated, sophisticated accent she had been practicing all evening. "You drank the Cabernet. You ate the truffles." They ignored her, practically sprinting toward the mahogany exit doors, abandoning the sinking ship with practiced efficiency. The table felt instantly larger, exposing my family to the cold, undeniable reality of the $21,000 deficit resting in the center. My father, sweating profusely, his face the color of raw beef, reached into his suit jacket. He pulled out a leather wallet, his hands trembling visibly. He extracted a gold-plated credit card and slammed it onto the table next to the receipt. "Fine," he snarled, though the aggression in his voice was thin and brittle. "We will pay your ridiculous extortion fee. But expect to hear from my lawyers first thing tomorrow morning, Harper. I will sue this establishment into the ground." I did not react to the empty threat. I simply tilted my head toward Marcus. He stepped forward seamlessly, producing a sleek, wireless payment terminal from his jacket pocket. He picked up the gold card, inserted the chip, and waited. The silence at the table was heavy, broken only by the soft, classical string arrangement playing overhead and the clinking of glasses from other, paying patrons. A harsh, sharp beep echoed from the terminal. The screen flashed red. "Declined, sir," Marcus stated, his voice a perfect, neutral monotone. My father's jaw tightened. "Run it again. Or use this one." He threw down a silver card, his breathing becoming shallow. Marcus smoothly swapped the cards. Another pause. Another sharp beep. "Declined, sir. Insufficient funds." "That is impossible," my father roared, half rising from his plush leather seat. "The machine is broken." "The machine operates flawlessly," I corrected him, my voice dropping to a low clinical register. "Just like my financial intelligence protocols." I ran a discreet credit sweep the moment Table 1's tab exceeded $5,000. "You have a combined debt of $42,312 across 3 accounts, with a utilization rate of 98%. Your mortgage is 60 days past due. You are technically insolvent." My mother gasped, dropping her counterfeit designer bag onto the floor. You invaded our privacy? How dare you look into our finances?" "I protect my corporate assets," I replied smoothly, crossing my arms over my plain white chef's jacket. "You presented yourselves as VIPs. You demanded premium inventory. In business, extending credit requires verification. My verification proves you are a high-risk liability with zero liquidity." Chloe was breathing heavily, her mascara starting to run down her cheeks. The arrogant princess was gone, replaced by a terrified child facing the consequences of her actions. "Harper, please," she begged, her voice shrinking. "It is my birthday. You cannot do this. We are your family. You made it abundantly clear 10 minutes ago that I am a prep cook and a family failure who should not be seen," I reminded her, perfectly mimicking her earlier tone. "Family is an emotional construct. This," I pointed to the glowing white receipt, "is a binding financial contract. Ethel does not accept emotional constructs as valid currency." "Harper, be reasonable," my father pleaded, the vein in his forehead pulsing frantically. The authoritative executive persona had completely shattered. "We do not have $21,000. You know we do not. What do you want us to do?" "I want you to pay for the goods and services you consumed," I stated, pulling my secure mobile device from my pocket. "You have exactly 5 minutes to secure a solvent guarantor. If the balance is not settled in full, I will call the police to report a grand theft of services, the deliberate destruction of the A5 Wagyu which you ordered fully aware you could not pay for elevates this to a felony fraud charge in this state. You would send your own parents to jail?" my mother sobbed, burying her face in her hands. "No," I replied, my expression carved from ice. "You sent yourselves." The 5 minutes evaporated in a pathetic display of frantic phone calls and whispered panic. My father dialed his business associates, the same men he had been boasting to an hour earlier. Every call went straight to voicemail. His status as a successful executive was a fragile illusion that could not survive the intense scrutiny of a $21,000 emergency. My mother had resorted to bargaining with the heir, clutching her imitation pearls and sobbing about how this scandal would destroy her reputation at the local country club. Chloe simply sat frozen, her phone abandoned on the table, her carefully curated social media persona obliterated by the reality of an impending arrest. I checked my watch. A vintage Vacheron Constantine. Authentic, understated, and impeccably accurate. 5 minutes. I announced, the words dropping like heavy stones into a quiet pool. Before my father could formulate another empty excuse, the heavy mahogany doors of the restaurant opened. The maitre d' escorted 2 uniformed police officers directly toward Table 1. The blue and red lights from their cruiser painted the frosted glass of the front windows, a public, undeniable broadcast of my family's humiliation. "Officers," I said, offering a curt nod. "Thank you for responding so quickly to the grand theft report." My mother shrieked, a genuinely awful sound. "No. Please. We are respectable people." The lead officer, a tall man with a stern expression, looked at the itemized receipt still resting on the table. "Ma'am, is this the party refusing to pay the $21,000 tab?" It is, I confirmed, my voice entirely devoid of pity. They ordered premium inventory, including a $10,000 A5 Wagyu, with zero intent or ability to settle the balance. It is a premeditated fraud. Wait, my father shouted, his voice cracking. He pointed a trembling finger directly at his favorite daughter. It was her. It is her birthday. She ordered the wine. She ordered the truffles. Arrest her. I only had a side salad and a glass of tap water. Chloe's head snapped toward our father, her eyes wide with absolute betrayal. Dad? Are you serious? You told me to order whatever I wanted. You said you were paying. I said no such thing, he lied, his survival instinct completely overriding any trace of parental affection. You are an adult. You signed the checks in your head. Take responsibility for your own actions. I watched the familial bond dissolve in real time. It was exactly as I had calculated. They did not love each other. They loved the convenience of each other's proximity to perceived wealth. The moment that wealth vanished, they threw each other to the wolves. Officer, Chloe sobbed, mascara staining her cheeks in dark, ugly streaks. I do not have the money. I am an influencer. I get paid in exposure. The officer reached for his handcuffs. Exposure does not pay the bills, miss. Stand up and place your hands behind your back. Stop, I interjected quietly. The single word halted the officer's movement. I turned to my sister. There is one alternative to a felony charge, Chloe. Today is your 25th birthday, which means the $25,000 trust fund grandfather left you legally matures at midnight tonight. Chloe stopped crying. She stared at me, her face pale. That trust was her lifeline. She had been bragging for months about using it to rent a luxury penthouse in Los Angeles to launch her career. You cannot take that, she whispered, her voice trembling. That is my future. Your future was spent on truffles and a ruined steak, I corrected her coldly. Marcus stepped forward, handing her a digital stylus and a tablet displaying a legally binding transfer of assets document. Sign the disbursement over to Ethel LLC. It covers the bill, the mandatory gratuity, and a standard administrative fee for my legal team's time. Sign it, my mother hissed, her maternal instincts entirely replaced by self-preservation. Sign it right now, Chloe, or they will put us all in a cell. Chloe looked at her parents, realizing she was entirely alone. With shaking hands and a fresh wave of tears, she took the stylus and scrawled her digital signature across the screen. The document verified instantly. The funds were irrevocably transferred. The trap was empty, and so was her bank account. The tablet in Marcus's hand emitted a soft, affirmative chime. The digital ink of Chloe's signature finalized the irreversible transfer of her $25,000 trust fund directly into the operational accounts of Ethel LLC. The transaction was absolute, satisfying the principal debt, the mandatory 20% gratuity, and the newly applied legal administration fees. Her balance was zeroed out, in every conceivable sense. Transaction verified, Marcus announced, his voice carrying the finality of a gavel striking wood. I turned to the two police officers, my posture relaxed but commanding. Thank you, officers. The financial dispute has been settled internally. Ethel will not be pressing formal criminal charges today. The lead officer tipped his hat, offering a stern glare at my trembling family. Consider yourselves incredibly fortunate. Have a good evening, ma'am. The officers turned and walked out through the heavy mahogany doors, the flashing blue and red lights finally fading from the frosted glass windows. The immediate threat of incarceration had passed, but the oppressive weight of their new reality settled over table one. Chloe was openly weeping into her hands, the catastrophic loss of her entire future financial safety net finally breaking her carefully cultivated delusions. My father, however, possessed a different kind of survival instinct, the parasitic kind. He straightened his tie, his eyes darting toward the sleek titanium card still resting on the table. The realization of my actual net worth was visibly rewiring his opportunistic brain. Harper, he began, attempting to mold his features into a mask of fatherly pride, though it looked more like a grimace. Now that this unfortunate misunderstanding is behind us, perhaps we should talk. Privately, I have several commercial real estate ventures in the financial district that are primed for a capital injection. With your obvious liquidity, We could keep the profits in the family. I stared at him. The audacity was not surprising. It was simply pathetic. You are fundamentally misunderstanding the dynamic of this interaction, I replied, my voice a quiet glacial stream. You did not just pay a bill. You bought your freedom from a felony conviction. There is no family here. There is only a creditor and a liability. And you are a liability I have just permanently liquidated. My mother reached out across the table, her hand shaking as she tried to grasp my chef's jacket. Harper, please. We are your parents. We gave you life. I took a deliberate step back, ensuring her hand grasped only empty air. You gave me an eviction notice when I refused to marry for money. You gave me ridicule when I chose to build an empire with my own hands. I have simply returned the favor, adjusted for inflation. I gestured toward Marcus. Escort them out. My father stood up, trying to salvage a microscopic shred of his shattered dignity. He adjusted his suit jacket. Fine. We are leaving. We will not be returning to this establishment. You are correct, I agreed smoothly. Because as of this exact second, you, my mother, and Chloe are permanently banned from Ethel. Furthermore, your biometric data has been flagged in my global security network. This lifetime ban extends to all 11 of my dining properties across North America, Europe, and Asia. If you step foot on my premises again, you will be arrested for criminal trespassing. Chloe stood up on shaky legs, clutching her cheap rental dress. She looked toward the glowing ambiance of the front entrance, eager to escape into the night. Not that way, I commanded, my voice stopping her in her tracks. VIP guests use the front doors. You are no longer guests. I pointed toward the swinging doors of the kitchen. You will exit through the service corridor. Out the back, past the dumpsters, it is the designated route for the prep cooks and the garbage. Marcus stepped forward, his arm extended toward the swinging doors that separated the dining room's illusion from the kitchen's reality. This way, please, he instructed, his voice ringing with a terrifying, professional politeness. My father's face flushed a deep, violent purple, the humiliation finally piercing his incredibly thick skin. He opened his mouth to argue, perhaps to demand the dignity of the mahogany front doors, but the cold, unyielding silence of the dining room stopped him. The other patrons, the genuine VIPs who actually possessed the wealth my family only pretended to have, were watching. He snapped his mouth shut, aggressively grabbed my mother by the elbow, and marched toward the kitchen. Chloe followed, dragging her feet, her sequined rental dress catching the amber light one last time before she pushed through the heavy stainless steel doors. I followed at a measured, deliberate pace, letting the doors swing shut behind me. The transition from the hushed, climate-controlled elegance of the dining area to the intense, brilliant glare of the working kitchen was jarring. The ambient heat hit them instantly, causing my father to immediately start sweating through his tailored suit. Chef Julian had paused his service. The entire kitchen brigade, 30 highly trained culinary professionals in pristine white coats, stood in perfect, motionless silence. They had heard the commotion over the radio headsets. They knew exactly who these people were. These were the guests who had demanded a well-done A5 Wagyu. The guests who had called their owner a cheap prep cook. The silence was far heavier than the heat. My father kept his eyes fixed strictly on the anti-slip quarry tiles, his counterfeit luxury watch glinting cheaply under the industrial fluorescent bulbs. My mother pulled her fake designer bag tight against her chest, shrinking away from the very people she usually treated as invisible furniture. Chloe stumbled over a heavy rubber floor mat, her stiletto heels entirely unsuited for a functional, high-paced workspace. A line cook nearest to her, a young man she had snapped her fingers at earlier, simply stared at her, offering absolutely no assistance. She scrambled to regain her balance, her face burning with profound shame, her mascara-stained tears leaving dark, ugly tracks down her ruined foundation. Keep moving, Marcus directed firmly, guiding them past the massive dishwashing station. The sudden blast of industrial steam and the sharp chemical scent of sanitized water washed over them, instantly ruining my mother's meticulously sprayed hair. They reached the heavy steel fire door at the extreme rear of the building. Marcus pushed the crash bar, and the door swung open, revealing the damp, dimly lit service alley. The air outside was cool but thick with the smell of wet asphalt, industrial bleach, and the pungent odor of the commercial dumpsters awaiting the early morning pickup. Marcus stepped aside, leaving the exit clear. My family hesitated on the threshold, staring out into the dark alleyway. It was a perfect, physical representation of their new, undeniable social standing. "Harper," my father said, turning back one final time. His voice was completely stripped of all executive pretense, reduced to a hollow, desperate rasp. "You have completely destroyed us." I stood securely under the bright kitchen lights, my plain white chef's jacket unwrinkled, my posture entirely relaxed. "I merely handed you the itemized invoice for your own behavior," I replied, my tone devoid of anger, sadness, or triumph. It was simply a quantifiable statement of fact. "Ethel's balance sheet is clear, so is mine." I did not wait for his inevitable, useless response. I reached out and pulled the heavy steel door shut. The loud, metallic clank of the deadbolt engaging echoed sharply through the kitchen, a definitive, physical end to a lifetime of their emotional extortion. I turned back to my staff. The brigade was still watching me, waiting for my directive. I took a slow, deep breath, inhaling the complex, beautiful aromas of reduced veal stock, searing meat, and fresh herbs, the unmistakable scent of my empire. "Service," I said quietly, yet firmly. "Yes, chef," the kitchen replied in perfect unison, the phrase ringing out like a synchronized battle cry. The rhythmic chopping of knives resumed. The copper pans hit the gas burners. The controlled, chaotic ballet of the kitchen sprang back to glorious life. I walked over to the stainless steel pass, my fingers lightly tracing the edge of a pristine white porcelain plate. I wiped away an imaginary smudge with a sterile cloth. Everything was finally exactly where it belonged. 6 months had passed since the heavy steel door of Ethel closed permanently on my former family. The morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse office in the financial district, casting long, sharp, geometric shadows across my polished oak desk. I took a slow sip of my black espresso, the single-origin beans roasted exclusively for my private estate. My encrypted tablet chimed with a discreet notification. It was the daily operational briefing from my primary wealth management team. Ethel had officially secured its 3rd Michelin star the night before, driving our corporate valuation up by another 22%. My total net worth now comfortably exceeded $85 million. But it was the secondary email, forwarded automatically by my legal department, that briefly held my attention. It was a public record notification regarding a Chapter 7 bankruptcy filing. The names on the docket were deeply familiar. My father's house, the heavily mortgaged suburban illusion he used to project his fake executive status, had been foreclosed upon exactly 90 days after the incident at my restaurant. Without Chloe's trust fund to drain, his financial house of cards had collapsed with spectacular speed. His leased mid-tier sedan had been repossessed in the parking lot of a discount grocery store. According to the public filing, he was currently employed as a mid-level shift supervisor at a regional logistics warehouse, answering directly to a manager half his age. My mother had attempted to liquidate her collection of designer handbags to cover their immediate legal fees, only to be publicly humiliated when the pawnbroker confirmed they were all low-grade counterfeits. She was now reportedly working as a part-time receptionist at a strip mall tanning salon, forced to actually serve the very demographic she used to mercilessly mock. As for Chloe, her carefully curated influencer career had imploded mere hours after her birthday dinner. One of her loyal friends, the one in the neon green dress who fled the table, had discreetly recorded the entire arrest threat and the humiliating trust fund transfer. The video was sold to a gossip blog for $5,000. The internet is a ruthless auditor of fake wealth. Chloe lost all her minor brand deals within 48 hours. The last update I received from a mutual acquaintance indicated she was currently working the drive-through window at a national fast food franchise, wearing a polyester uniform that smelled permanently of cheap fry oil. A stark contrast to the $1,200 Cabernet she once demanded I serve her. I read the report with complete emotional detachment. There was no joy, no residual anger, and certainly no pity. They were simply a set of finalized data points. A closed account. I tapped the screen, dragging the bankruptcy notification into the digital trash bin. It was instantly deleted, leaving no trace on my pristine dashboard. Marcus walked into my office, his posture as impeccable as ever, carrying a thick leather binder. "Good morning, Miss Harper. The acquisition papers for the Parisian property are ready for your signature." The current owners accepted your lowball offer after their credit line was unexpectedly severed. Thank you, Marcus, I replied, my voice steady and cold. I picked up my platinum fountain pen. Have the design team begin drafting the renovations immediately. We will strip the interior down to the concrete and rebuild it entirely. Of course, Marcus nodded, a faint smile touching his lips. Will you be doing a site visit, chef? I looked out over the sprawling city skyline, watching the millions of people moving far below, completely unaware of the quiet, ruthless empires being built above them. I thought of the heat of the kitchen, the precision of a perfect reduction, and the absolute power of financial independence. I will, I said, signing my name with a sharp, definitive flourish. Have my jet fueled and ready by noon. There is a new kitchen waiting for me.